every organization is feeling the pinch at the moment. It's not just a question of fuel. If you look at material price increases, labor inflation, I mean, it's in the news every day, right? It's not just limited to fuel. So that's the first thing really to say. And some commercial models in the NEC go some way to make adequate allowance for those fluctuations and those inflationary increases. So that kind of gives some hope that if you're a responsible and mature and capable client, you'll make allowances for price fluctuations within your total budget envelope. Yeah. And hopefully it's an incentive budget envelope. I also just included here that there's a great piece of work done by Build UK offering guidance on how to manage those price escalations, and there's a link there. But there's a very simple kind of guide, step-by-step guide about actually talking to your contractor about in the negotiations of your contracts of opening up those instruments, fiscal instruments, to make sure that you're protected when going into contract for future price escalation. So I think there are instruments that can be used. That depends on what I said at the start, is that kind of level of maturity, that level of, am I in this for the long haul and I want to build partnerships with my supplier base to deliver this project, or am I looking to burn and turn the next relationship and actually just not, be very short term in my thinking in the relationships that I have.
Yeah. I guess what the aim of this exercise has been that I've been on this journey is to be able to, like, similar to like how banks do it, to stress test the contract, right? So basically to look at, well, what happens if fuel prices rise, right? What happens if this contract goes bad? How much is it going to cost us at what point in the contract? And also, how bad is it going to be, right? So if let's say there isn't a critical failure event, how bad is it going to be? What is this contractor coming back to us with? A 5% cost increase, 25%, right? And it's not just steel. It might be steel. It might be rebar. It might be like concrete. It might just be labor. They might have like some like crazy difference in lead time. Like, there's so many different variables to connect.
Absolutely. So look, this is music to my ears. What you're talking about is procurement excellence, effectively. In your decision making, when you set out to go and procure a mega project, are you doing a procurement plan? Do you have procurement strategies for your routes to market? Are you basically analyzing risk at every stage in the process? And one of the things that we did at SCS Railways is we created a very simple, because it's about consistency and making it simple and automating a digital process that allows you to, each procurement officer, to align to that kind of overall risk management approach and procedure. We did a 4 whole points approach. We said, whole point 1 is, what's your procurement strategy? Write it down, send it to me as the procurement director or one of my appointed leaders. I want them to check and challenge you that you've thought this through.
Yeah.
And that's a very simple 1-pager that says who, what, when, how, and why. Yeah.
Yeah.
The next step is, before you go out to market, I want to see your due diligence. I want to make sure that you've done market research on what's available, on the capacity and capability of the supplier base, and how you've shortlisted your supply chain to a competent set of suppliers that can actually manage the scope.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to take a step backwards, right? The only reason why cost verification exists is essentially because there's a lack of trust, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
And for trust to exist, it has to be mutually provided by both of the parties, and that's kind of how you form trust. So we think the answer is to this challenge, and the question, just so you remind yourself, is do you know whether organizations, especially tier ones and tier twos, are trying to improve cost assurance activities, and if so, how? It's all about actually. I know I'm bleating on about trust at the start, but it's fundamentally important if we're going to turn the tide on cost verification in the industry. The challenge is to build trust and focus less time and effort on verification and more energy in co-creating these relationships that I've talked about in the last piece. Transparency and resilience is all about actually building trust. It's too transactional. You've heard me bleat on about that, but yeah. So I, in over 2 decades that I've worked with suppliers, all of them have been ethical. Okay, every single claim that's come to the table about unethical or suppliers not acting ethically has actually been nullified. There's been no evidence to support the assertion that they've been unethical. So I think there's a huge kind of bias or unconscious bias that we feel that we're being ripped off. And it might be because there's lack of process, there's lack of transparency in process that is promoting why cost verification exists in the first place. And I think that's actually what it is.